Chiefs take down the Broncos at Arrowhead Stadium in the rare noon game in Kansas City on a last-second blocked field goal. 1 second left in the game. Leo Chanel does this thing, blocks the field goal. Chiefs win 16-14 over the Broncos. Very close game. We are going to get into that in detail with EDJ. He's stopping by the pod this week. Excited to have him on, and we're going to talk Chiefs football. Short-term, long-term, we're going to talk this weekend, next weekend, a little bit into the beyond as well. The Bills coming up next week, of course. Big win for the Chiefs. They improved to 9-0, still have not lost since Christmas Day of last year. So, if you are enjoying the content, enjoying the podcast, or any of the film breakdowns your boy Papa Shro will be putting out week to week, make sure you smash that subscribe button. We are on the road to 300 subscribers. Hit that bell to stay notified whenever I do post anything or go live. I'll try to go live a little bit more upcoming. I did the one halftime of the Falcons game, kind of tested out, but I do plan on doing that maybe more often. Hopefully, also smash that like button if you enjoy the content and enjoy listening to me ramble away as I do. A little bit to get into before we jump into the conversation with me and EDJ. I would like to just talk a little bit of NFL this weekend. How long is Mike McCarthy going to stay in this league? At least as a Cowboys head coach, because it is Armageddon in Dallas. I mean, the sky is falling at this point. 34-6, loss to the Eagles. The Cowboys fall 2-3-6, and obviously without your quarterback, kind of tough to do business in the NFL. Trey Lance got a little bit of playing time. Cooper Rush, 13 of 23, 45 yards. He did get sacked once. Trey Lance, 4 of 6, 21 yards. He threw an interception. I didn't watch any of this game, actually, so I don't really know exactly what went down. Just reading the box score at this point. Looks like A.J. Brown had a pretty good game, 5 catches, 109 yards. I was at Arrowhead, obviously, during this game, or at least during most of it. I don't know if that was an afternoon game. Sunday Night Football currently, as of recording, is 16-7. The Texans lead over the Lions, so I guess the future will tell who won that game. Monday Night Football, the Dolphins head into L.A. to play the Los Angeles Rams. The Panthers beat the Giants. That's another head coach that should be on a real hot seat this afternoon if he isn't fired already by now by the time that I put this podcast out. That's Brian Dable. The Bears seem like they just can't get anything together. The Bills cut it close with the Colts. So Patriots 19-3 victory. The Bills 30-20 over the Colts. Joe Flacco, he had a pretty bad game. Vikings get a win. They improved to 7-2, 12-7 over the Jaguars. Another guy, Doug Peterson. How long will we see him? The Saints get a big victory, 20-17, 3-point win after firing their head coach, Dennis Allen. And the 49ers squeak by the Buccaneers, as well as the Steelers also kind of squeaking by 1 point over the Commanders. Chargers get a win, and they are sneakily 6-3, which will be good for second place in the division, under the Kansas City Chiefs and above the Denver Broncos. The only other game this week, the Cardinals beat the Jets 31-6. Interesting week of NFL. I think we could see a whole host of NFL coaches get fired between Dable, Peterson, and who's the other coach that I was looking at just a second ago? I mentioned Mike McCarthy. Duh. So I led this all off with interesting to say the least. Between this week, the Bengals fall to 4-6 against the Ravens on Thursday night. And this playoff picture is going to be really interesting the way it's shaping up. The Bills are at 8-2. A game and a half, I guess, behind the Chiefs. They haven't had their bye week. They get to play the Chiefs, which will really, if they can get a victory over the Chiefs at home, that will really put them in the mix to actually compete for that number 1 seed. And especially as we go on down the line throughout the season, I think will give them a much better chance to compete with that number 1 seed. It's going to be hard to compete for the number 1 seed, though, if the Bills lose this game. That'll give the Chiefs the tiebreak over the Bills and the Ravens, and I don't think that you're going to have to worry about the Bengals as me and EDJ kind of get into the Bengals a little bit in our conversation coming up. So, really just kind of wanted to talk about the NFL in general, kind of go over some of the scores and really the head coaching debacles or whatever the hell is going on with coaches right now. But without further ado, let's talk about these Chiefs. Let's get in this conversation with me and EDJ. All right, so wanted to welcome back EDJ on the pod. Finally, got you back on here. I think it's been since what the off season we spoke on the pod last, somewhere around there.
Well, I don't know. Between the time change and this, 9-0 run that feels like it's 37-0 with all these, 8-point combined victories. I don't even know. But, it's good to be back. I really thought that we were going to have one of those divisional blunders. I mean, it's Sean Payton who hate the Broncos as you will. He's done a fantastic job with that team that had no hope whatsoever 3 years ago. So, I
I
mean,
absolutely
call for
agree.
what you will. He's definitely brought that team to a different level, at least a competitive level to where they can beat a team in the playoffs. I mean, you saw that today. Now, it's not necessarily their offense. I don't think their offense is very good, but just their defense is very, in your face. It's very instant. They're there. I mean, they're there in 5 seconds. We'll get into all that, but um, I'm surprised my brown hair is still brown after everything that happened this week, not just in football, but in America in general. But a good week all around.
Yeah, man. This game was crazy from beginning to end, and the Broncos. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't get on here last week. Just a lot going on, but the Broncos worried me a little bit coming into this game. I disagree a little bit. I think their offense is good, and I think Bo Nix is the real deal. And that touchdown pass that they hit was the exact same play they ran against the Ravens where Bo overthrew him. That was the moment that kind of had me, I don't know, like my ears perk up or however you want to say it, to the Broncos, just because I thought that was a well-designed play. He was wide open and Bo just missed him. And I do really like the accountability from Bo Nix. The line he had earlier in the season, whatever it was, I got to stop throwing the ball to the other team or whatever he said. I thought that was funny or whatever the comment was. But all in all, between the two quarterbacks, Bo Nix, 22 of 30, 215 yards, had two touchdowns. Pat Mahomes, 266 yards and a touchdown, off 28 completions, 42 attempts. Now, with Patrick Mahomes, I think in this game, I saw a meme floating around of him celebrating and saying when you did nothing on the class project and celebrating an A. And I kind of would push back against that just a little bit, just for what he had to deal with up front. And right before we started this, I told EDJ I'm gonna ask you about the offensive line, how you felt, because Kingsley Suamatia, man, he's a rookie. Things haven't come along yet. I don't know if that's what the Chiefs were expecting necessarily, but I mean, he's not at the starter level in the NFL right now, I don't think. Does any of that worry you, like heading on this run? Obviously, we've been here a couple of times now. I'm kind of talking about the playoffs, even though
Right.
who knows what
It's
it's going to look like when we get there. But
yeah, right. I mean, it's so funny because in that Ravens game, in the opening game, he looked amazing. And he was, leading the block for Pacheco. He was knocking guys over left and right. I mean, he looked like another home run by Veach. But you can tell that he's just not ready, and he's just not physically prepared to be that left tackle in the NFL yet. I think he can be. He's shown glimpses of where he very well can be a very solid left tackle in the NFL. But, Morris has stepped in and he was the guy who wasn't ready yet and wasn't necessarily a big time left tackle, but he has definitely stepped into a role, and kind of flipped that script to where, well, now we can kind of lean on Morris to be the starting left tackle for the Chiefs. And going into today's game, you had to know that, there's a lot of animosity on that Broncos coaching staff. You have Sean Payton, who basically is in tears every time he talks about the draft. The Saints were a pick away from getting Patrick Mahomes. And then you talk about, the old Denver coach, getting a chance to come back, be the defense coordinator, and kind of get some revenge on Andy. So there's a lot of animosity there that adds to that rivalry. And I mean, I talked about in the opening, Denver's defense is just, they're in your face in 2 seconds. I mean, and that A gap blitzing that they did was phenomenal. And that's something you don't see against the Chiefs, especially on that Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith side. That's almost impossible, but Bonito was fantastic, and I mean, that's a huge question mark heading forward is can the Chiefs handle that A gap? Because now you're playing Buffalo, and Buffalo watched that. I don't think they didn't watch that. So there's a
They'll be
lot of
watching it all
concern.
week on
Oh,
tape.
yeah, yeah. Jim and Tony were already talking about it when they got bored during the Eagles Dallas game. So don't worry about it. It's the biggest game of the week.
Yeah.
But that A gap blitzing was a huge. Their outside pressure was great. That I can't remember his first name, but Allen, their defensive end from Denver, and he's a monster. I mean, he absolutely dominated the whole game. So I mean, there's a lot of issues that the Chiefs have to focus on here. Now that they're 9-0, I know people get upset about, oh well, they barely win, they barely win, they barely win. Who cares? They still win. That you're missing the point. They're 9-0. They still win games. Are they going to go on this dominant run? The Chiefs have never really gone on dominant runs. You never really seen, oh, well, the Chiefs won 55-15. That's not their style. That's not
Yeah.
Andy's style. That's not how they play. So, you know, be amazed at what you're seeing, but realize that anybody can be anybody on any given Sunday. And we almost saw that today.
Reminder, this game was played on November 10th. The Chiefs haven't lost since December 25th,
Yes. And they lost very
2023.
badly on December 25th.
Yeah, well,
So, I mean,
yeah. That's fair.
let's call it for what it is. But I think they've learned from that too. That was probably what the low point of that season last year. I mean, they were just so back and forth of, can we figure it out? Is Nagy's offense working? Is it not working? I think that's still a big question mark of is Nagy even that good of a coordinator? Probably not. But, that was the low point, I think, of Patrick Mahomes' career was after that Raiders game. It's man, we're not kind of bad, we're really bad,
I mean,
and
division
we don't.
or Denver was threatening to win the division at that point. It wasn't even for
Right,
certain that the
right,
Chiefs were going to win the division at that point. So,
right.
and I do agree with you. I think they learned from that big time. And one of the things that I'll say this year that I think is different from last year is, whatever you want to call them, the worst undefeated team of all time or whatever you want to say,
I think
they're
that was the
winning these
Steelers two
games.
years ago, but either way.
Right. But they're still winning these games and they're handling them. They're maybe, today's Sunday's game was a little bit less of where it was in hand, but I think the composure of the Chiefs is really, to me, what stands out because we want to get in these talks about the officials and they're on the Chiefs side and all of these things that everybody likes to say online. But the fact of the matter is, it's just they hold their composure the best between any other team in the NFL. You don't see any of the Chiefs players going out getting 15-yard penalties for screaming at the official that they don't get a call. They may say, "Hey, I noticed it a couple of times in the game today where I think there was one on D Hop that he really wanted called, or the face mask on Patrick Mahomes. They showed on the video board afterwards that I mean he clearly got a hold of his face mask. The officiating sucks. Like that's all the
Yes,
way around. They just
yes, it
suck.
does. Yeah.
So you want to say they're for this team or for that team? I mean, look at Thursday night, Bengals
Oh,
versus Ravens. Last play of the game. They have a frame, a picture where there is three face masks being
I was getting
held
ready to say
on one
three face
play.
masks, two holding, and one pass interference. So I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean,
and
and
you
they
missed
missed it
six
all.
calls. Yeah.
They missed it all. And also, just to give the officials a little bit of slack, they are also watching this in real time, not in
Yeah.
any of the views that we're seeing this in. They're not on the broadcast camera. They're not on the all 22 view where we love to pick out, everybody that's holding and stuff. Well, my advice would be you go sign up and see how difficult it is to catch a hold in in the moment or somebody flinching in the moment to move back on a false start or something like that. That was the big one last week was Jawan Taylor's false start, which every tackle in the league gets away with anyway. So I don't
Well,
know. I
I,
mean,
I had to give you a weird look, but you totally froze there. So I'm not exactly sure.
Oh,
Chiefs.
fair enough. It did give me a thing that my internet's unstable. So just to go back to that real quick, just for
Yeah.
EDJ's sake, just basically the gist of what I'm saying is the officiating sucks all the way
Yeah.
around. And the Chiefs hold their composure. And I think that's why they
Hmm.
win these close games. And also, they're locked in. I think that they are 100% locked in, whereas last year they were not. They were coming in for another back-to-back. And, now with the three-peat on the horizon, they've already went back-to-back. They know what that's like. They know what they need to do to get back to that point. But they really had to find themselves. And they needed that loss to the Raiders on Christmas Day last year to be able to find themselves, I think, and that identity they were looking for once they got to the postseason and were able to beat everybody. So I think this year it's more about getting in front of it instead of letting, some things kind of fall through the cracks throughout the season. Whereas I think that they did before. I think I don't want to say taking the regular season more seriously, but just for lack of a better term, they're taking the regular season more serious this year, I think. And the fact that they get everybody's best shot. Nobody comes into Arrowhead thinking, oh, this is just another game. No, this is the back-to-back world champion team. If we beat them, everyone's going to be talking about us all week. We're going to put ourselves in prime position to look like a real contender. Everybody wants to beat the Chiefs. And that target is on their back, and I think that helps them out. Because by come playoff time, they'll be used to getting everybody's best shot every week. Everybody ramps up for the playoffs. Everybody's already ramped up against the Chiefs. The regular season is essentially a preseason for the postseason for the Chiefs at this point. And I think that's how they treated it last year. Whereas this year, they're treating it more of like, okay, we really got to get ready for this. There's a lot more on the line this year, and we're going at it. But one other
Well,
point. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
well, yeah. I was just gonna say I agree with you. There's, and I think that's what gets lost on a lot of people who, like you said, are the keyboard warriors and are on TikTok and don't really understand, is that you are now playing one of a franchise that's catapulted in one of the best franchises of all time, and you've just won the last two Super Bowls. So now you're going to get everybody's best shot times 10. I mean, look at the shot Baker Mayfield and the Bucks gave us. Look at the shot that we will definitely get against Buffalo on Sunday midday. I mean, we're getting a shot every single week. So, like you said, I mean, this is going to be an absolutely a chipped, shielded team heading into the playoffs because they're used to it, and they've been used to it for the past 4 or 5 years. So, I mean, yes, the Chiefs win a lot of close battles, but to me, that is more impressive than watching the Ravens blow somebody out by 30 points and then putting up 10 points in the playoffs and losing. Same thing with the Bills, choking in the playoffs every single year, but winning 50-14 against the Patriots. That's cool and all, but you're not doing it when it matters. And that's a big nod to Andy Reid. That's a huge nod to Patrick Mahomes. And that's why we're having these conversations, is that the Chiefs do it and the other teams just don't.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Last kind of thing that I wanted to circle back to is the offensive line of we saw D Hop get added. We may see Hollywood Brown, and at this point, I wouldn't rule out Rashee Rice, honestly, by the time of the playoffs, based on how they're acting about his progression through his injury, as well as Pacheco. But it doesn't matter how many skill players you have if you can't throw the ball. I mean, Patrick
Yes.
Mahomes is having a couple of seconds, if that, like on a good play.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it seemed like every time he dropped back today, it was, the rush was on him immediately. So I do think that that's something that the Chiefs really are going to have to figure out. And that's the number one problem right now, I think. I don't think there's a bigger problem than the offensive line at this point and the tackles. And Jawan Taylor is I don't know. He's hit and miss. It's like he shows up sometimes. He was excellent in the playoffs last year, and I think that's all we can hope for. But left tackle, I mean, I felt a little bit of comfort in left tackle just because I thought, okay, they know what they're doing. They drafted Sumatia. They must feel like, he's going to be able to be that guy. Wanye Morris didn't look good or great last year at all. But I do think he has taken a step up. But then again, it's like there's also long term, what is the plan? You got contracts coming up. Who knows if Trey Smith is going to stick around? The offensive line is one that worries me further than just this year to what's going to happen, but
Hmm.
especially this year, maybe what they can do. Although, shout out to Samaj P. Ryan because that man can chip like no like like nobody else is what I'm
You
trying to
know,
say.
yeah, I mean, he's been a nice addition. I wouldn't necessarily say statistically you're not going to see it, but those guys are usually the best to add because statistically you probably wouldn't even know so much AP Ryan was on the team. But he has that chip blocking ability. He has that pass blocking ability that you don't see with Kareem Hunt. You don't see with Carson Steele, and you see with Pacheco, but he's out. So, you have to deal with what you have to deal with. And P. Ryan isn't necessarily an every down back. He's a second, third down back, passing back, if that. So, I mean, yeah, he definitely has that chip blocking ability. Another thing I wanted to touch on, and this is kind of going back, and we've joked about this in the past, you don't really realize what you're missing until it's gone. But that left tackle, I think Eric Fisher is the most disrespected Chief of all time.
I
I mean,
could
he
I could
he
see
he
that.
really he really is. I mean, when he was injured, we were terrible left tackle. We were terrible, and everyone hated Eric Fisher. But as soon as he came back, Alex Smith was fine. So, a left tackle, and I say that to say this, a left tackle that is healthy and can play, it doesn't necessarily have to be the biggest star in the world. That's going to help your team win a Super Bowl. And right now, like you said, and I agree with you, that left tackle spot, Patrick has a second and a half, and it's
Hmm.
only going to get harder, especially in the playoffs, especially if you run into Baltimore again, especially if you run to, Buffalo again. I don't think we'll see Cincinnati. I think they're in a rough spot. You know, every single play Joe Burrow's clutching his left hand or right hand, whichever it is, trying to figure out if he even has a hand anymore. So, I mean, the Bengals, I think, are in a tough spot. I don't think we'll see Trey Hendrickson again. Thank goodness for that, because I mean, that guy's an absolute unit in himself.
Well, and he was the
So,
catalyst to all this. That was the game
right.
where they pulled
Mm-hmm.
Sumatia,
Mm-hmm.
was where Trey Hendricks was absolutely just blowing him up week 2.
Well, I mean, and I was telling another friend this. I said, that's a huge ask to ask a rookie to, hey, you know what? Why don't you go ahead and play 4 quarters against probably the second or third best defensive end in football? And oh, by the way, you're not going to get any help ball games. So good luck. It's that it was just that was setting up for failure on that one. I mean, and he's had some issues after that, but that was a huge, I think that was a huge mistake, not a mistake by Andy, but just a oversight by Andy. Is that yes, he was good against Baltimore, but Trey Henderson's a different animal, and that got shown that game. But I think he has potential. I think Juan Morris is doing a great job. My concern is once, like you said, Creed Humphrey's already signed. We'll see what Trey Smith does. Juan Taylor. I hate to say this. Juan Taylor, we will miss him if he's gone.
I
I
agree.
think we will miss him if he's gone. Now, he jumps too much, and I don't think you can correct that at this point of his career because he does it every single play. You're not going to correct that at this point. Just get over it. Um, but his penalties have dropped significantly since last year into the playoffs. Now he has had a couple this year, but I think last year at this point he had what over 60% of the offensive line penalties at one point.
Yeah, and he was the most penalized player in the entire NFL last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's great that you speak to that on the playoffs because that is one thing that I think is hilarious. No one can understand is the fact that you could because this is the whole team really, right? Last year, you could have a terrible regular season and then step it up and play the best that you've played all year in the playoffs because you know what you're playing for, you know where you're at, you know what I mean? And Jawan Taylor wasn't necessarily new to that. He was with the
Mm-hmm.
Jaguars in Arrowhead Stadium the year before, playing against the Chiefs in the playoffs. So I don't think that that's crazy to think that somebody's performance could significantly increase in the playoffs, especially when really the entire team significantly got better in the playoffs. Everybody locked in basically. But yet, I mean, everybody, like you said, the keyboard warriors out there, they like to put out the fact that He didn't get called for holding really or anything in the postseason. Yeah, he cleaned it up. He cleaned up what he was doing, and we do still see it here and there because there was one today where he had an illegal formation, and the entire Broncos sideline pointed it out. Like I before that, when that play was happening, D Hop was the only receiver over there. So I was really confused on what was going on. And like I just saw three different Broncos coaches run up to the sideline right in that area, pointing something out to the official that was on the sideline. And they talked about it. Like you could tell they were kind of discussing it. And D Hop kind of looked over for a minute, and then that's when they go to run the play. And immediately when they run the play, the official throws a flag. So I knew what was coming essentially was probably going to be something to that effect. It was an illegal formation on Taylor. So, eh, you know, another thing that I feel like a lot of people don't take into account is how good edge rushers are in this league. They
Hmm.
get paid millions upon millions of dollars to do one thing, and that is hit the quarterback. Like, I mean, these
Yes.
dudes are the most athletic, the biggest, the best we have ever seen. Like the technically the best, the way they work, the fastest, strongest. Like, I mean, the athlete we see in 2024 versus the athlete we saw in, I don't know, 1964, quite a difference between what you are asking a 300-pound guy to work off of his back foot to then keep him from getting to the quarterback. That's not easy. And you know what? If every tackle in the game jumps a half second early to protect their quarterback, and it doesn't even work all the time. That's another
No,
thing
it
that kind of
doesn't.
gets me. It's you could see a dude jump a full second early
Hmm.
and still get absolutely torched on the edge. So I don't mind it, honestly. Like I don't mind them not calling it because, if you're constantly going up against somebody that's just kicking your ass all day and that kind of, just getting past you, what why do we need to see 10 different false start penalties because you're
Well, yeah,
getting
I mean,
your tail kicked?
yeah, you touched on a good point there. I mean, the guys on defensive line are 6'3", 6'4", 320 pounds, and that's on a light day. So I mean, those guys are as big as the offensive linemen, if not bigger at times. So, you're dealing with huge dudes that can play and are quicker than you. So you have to use every advantage you can. Now, Taylor's jumping is annoying, and it is something that will get them in trouble, especially when the league made it an emphasis at one point, last year to literally throw it every single time he moved half a second early. They kind of leaned back from that this year. I noticed not just in Chiefs games, but in every game. I've noticed they've taken a step back from that. Um, but yeah, I mean, the skill that it takes to play offensive line is very overlooked. I mean, you have to deal with gap blitzers and edge blitzers and linebackers, and even when the Chiefs do the corner blitzes, if you don't pick that up, it's over.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different work that you have to do with an offensive lineman. One thing that you touched on that I want to go back to is that we're talking about a team who just doesn't lose when it matters. And I think people, and you talked about the composure, I think you're absolutely right on that, especially this year. Last year, they didn't have that. I think they have that this year. But if you're a fan and you're watching these games, and you and I have watched the Chiefs for a long, long time, your mood changes based off of past experiences and watching them play every day. Not once did I feel like we were in trouble until Will Lutz lined up for that field goal. And that's not saying, oh, Chiefs, the Chiefs, Chiefs. I'm just not. I'm not. And I think people don't understand that. I think that sounds arrogant to people, it pisses people off. But if you watch the Chiefs, which a lot of people don't even watch the Chiefs, which I found out, a lot of people don't even watch Chiefs games. They just see clips and they go, oh, look how bad this team is. You don't watch Chiefs games.
I
You don't
mean, I
watch
think
these
that's
games
a
like
lot
I
of
do.
just the NFL in general and just,
That too.
the younger generation. That's how they consume the game
Hmm.
and, clips on TikTok or whatever it is of where they're kind of piecing stuff together rather than watching the whole game and, really having a good idea of what's happening. I mean, I think kids no matter what. I mean, I know when we were kids, it's not like we understood everything that was going on and whatnot, but
No,
I do
yeah.
think you make a very good point about just how you feel. And I bet Patriots fans could attest to this as well during their
Hmm.
dynasty, or even Colts fans during the Peyton Manning
I
era,
was gonna
or
say Peyton
Broncos
Manning
fans
and
in their Peyton Manning
hmm
era, or, just when you have a team that you know how good they are, it's hard to ever feel like you're even gonna lose. And whereas, I mean, flashback 10 years ago, I think we were about the very opposite, where I don't know if we really felt in situations like that we would ever win. It's like watching the Mizzou game on Saturday and was like, oh yeah, definitely gonna drop this thing to Oklahoma here. And they ended up pulling it out, and I was like, wow, good job, guys. Like they actually did it.
yeah.
But
Well, just to
real
touch on
quick,
that,
because we can talk
go ahead.
about that, but real quick
Yeah.
before I finish, because I was at the game and the guy in front of me, was just I was explaining to him the situation because I don't think he really understood. I don't know if he was just drunk and not paying attention, or if he just
That's
didn't get it to
Arrowhead.
that
That's probably very good.
right, or
Yeah.
just get it to that
Yeah.
level because he definitely was drinking. So, um, the Broncos were getting ready to kneel the ball to kick the field goal, and so he kept on yelling at everybody, "Get loud!" And I'm like, they're gonna kneel it. I mean, we can get loud all we want, but they're gonna kneel the ball and they're gonna kick a field goal. We have no way to stop the clock. We just have to hope for a missed field goal. But I then told this guy, I was like, I don't know, man. I was in this spot for the 13-second game against Buffalo. There's not really much unless that scoreboard read like 40 to 14 with a second left. There's not really much in my mind anymore after that game, because I just going back to that game, I still don't even know why I thought it was possible to win that game with 13 seconds left, but I
Right.
just had like a dumb luck, happy go lucky attitude on it. And I remember thinking, damn, if I would have watched that game on TV, there would have been no chance. I mean, they're already talking about Cincinnati versus Buffalo next week in the AFC Championship game. But for some reason, I just thought he can still miss it. And they still have to make the kick.
Right.
And
Right.
it's funny because block never even came into my head. Like I
Mm-mm.
never even thought about them blocking it. And when
Hmm.
it happened, I mean the crowd went crazy. Everybody just went nuts. Like,
Well, I was watching. They were talking about because Will Lutz tried a 60-yarder from the logo. When that wind was blowing inward, which I thought was kind of crazy. I think he had the wind at his back at this point. I can't remember,
yeah, it was
but
the
that
other
yeah,
direction he was kicking.
but that wind, was definitely a factor because you saw Bucker's kicks and they were straight lines, but they were moving with the wind. So he could have definitely missed that kick. But like you said, I agree with you. I wasn't expecting a block. I was expecting him to miss it, a snap, a messed up hold, or they were going to make it. I was okay with 8-1. I feel like eventually the Chiefs always drop a divisional game they shouldn't. So, if it was against the Broncos, who have been decent this year, that's fine. Whatever. They can have one, but I like to keep that Arrowhead record against them going. So we'll keep it going for now. But yeah, I mean, that's the NFL. And I think that's what people forget is the NFL is so unpredictable. It's hard to be good at guessing what's going to happen.
It's so unpredictable, everyone thinks it's rigged.
Well, yeah, that too. Yeah, yeah, that too. People are so think it's rigged so much that they watch it every week because it's rigged. So why would you watch it? But people just watch a rigged sport apparently. So,
Right.
uh, but yeah, it's been a crazy start. The thing that concerns me, and we haven't talked about this yet, is Worthy's route running. Worthy's route running is a problem. Patrick missed him on that ball today. I think that was on Patrick, but
I think it was a little bit of
Worthy's
both. I think they're
it was
just
a
not
little bit
in
of
tune
both.
with each other
Yeah.
on stuff like that, because so much stuff when it comes to the improvised stuff, I feel like, even Kelsey's talked about it plenty of times, of just he just kind of goes with what he feels is right. So I think that's kind of what Pat does too. And I think it's hard for anybody to. I feel like we've seen it with D Hop too. Now, the Kelsey one at the end of the game, that was 100% on Pat. I mean, he was in the position, but I
Hmm.
do agree with you with Worthy. I do think that he's definitely in a bit of a slump, and I think that it's kind of expected, but it's also reminds us of why Andy handles receivers the way he does in his offense. I don't think that he's comfortable. I think that, if anything, the last two games have shown me is that it's almost like a student getting into a new class that's moving rapidly and they're just swamped by everything and can't keep up.
Right.
Because he also doesn't have full control of his body, I don't think. And I don't
No,
know if
he
that's
doesn't.
a can't adjust to how fast he is as a player or what exactly, but he is kind of, adjusting to the NFL in a way. And I think that he's just not, we talk about body control a lot for receivers, and I just don't think that's there with him.
Well, you put the nail on the head on that one. In that Bucks game, he's wide open. You were probably there. He's wide open. No one is around you. If you have to jump to the left a little bit and make it a harder catch for yourself, do it. There's not a soul around. There wasn't a soul around him by 20 yards. You can adjust your body to make a more difficult catch, even though the throw wasn't perfect. You could have stayed in bounds.
Yeah.
And I think that's just it's his awareness, one, that's not there yet, and two, it's his route running. And
Yeah.
three, like you said, I think he's just confused, as to what because Andy's route running tree is complicated, and it's like you said, it's a lot of improvising. And DeAndre Hopkins has to learn that too. I think he's done a really good job the last 2 weeks, learning that. But I think Worthy has all the potential in the world, but he's got to learn. And I think once Rasheed Rice, if he does come back before the playoffs, which everything's tracking to look like he might, I think they sit Worthy for a game or two and just say, hey, just watch. We're good. We have D Hop. Kelsey's playing a lot better. Just watch.
Yeah. I
We'll
absolutely
let you come back
agree.
in.
I absolutely agree. And today goes attest to that. One catch on four targets for 11 yards. I mean, he really didn't contribute a ton to the game other than more or less being a decoy. I would argue to say Kelsey is not doing better. He's just getting the ball now. Because I think that he was still doing a fine job early in the season, and really a lot of Rasheed Rice's success was off of Kelsey, which is where I thought they'd put Worthy more is basically kind of supposed to be D Hop and somewhat, but it doesn't seem like they're putting him as much on the slot, more of having him out wide,
Mm-hmm.
rather than have him in the slot and have him in the area. But I mean, because Kelsey was still commanding, like taking away zones over the middle of the field. I mean, a lot of that Rasheed Rice early in the year was because Kelsey came through, took one of the linebackers that was supposed to be in zone over the middle of the field, and then took the second one with him. And then here comes Rasheed Rice underneath, nobody around him. But um, no, I think you're right. I think everybody just kind of like learning on this offense. And D Hop today, 5 targets, 4 catches, 56 yards. I agree with you. I mean, I think he's fit right in with this offense immediately and has helped out in a huge way. And every time he makes a big play, I tweet D Hop is washed now, which is funny because last week somebody replied to me and said, "You don't know ball." And I just thought that's hilarious because really I'm just being a troll
Mm-hmm.
tweeting that because that's all we heard. D Hop's washed, gave
Mm-hmm.
up too much for D Hop, and
Well, I don't know
um,
how a fifth round pick is too much for D. I mean, it's a fifth round, a
it
potential
might
fourth,
be a
depending
fourth
on what happened.
round.
I mean, listen, I mean, it's if it doesn't work out, we'll get over. It. But you know, I, it's worked out very well. I mean, a lot of people thought, well, go get Devontae Adams, go get this, go get that. The Raiders weren't going to give us Devontae Adams. I mean,
I didn't
it
think
just
so.
wasn't going to happen. I mean, so I don't know why everyone thought that. We weren't going to get Mike Williams. It just wasn't going to happen. So you have to go and get that veteran guy who still has, gas in his tank, but is on a really bad team with a really bad quarterback. And that's what we did.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think people are seeing now, and again, it's only his third game, and he could potentially have a really bad game next week. Who knows? But you're seeing that veteran awareness, and he talked about it himself. He said, "I'm in a position to where now I feel like I needed to play good football because in Tennessee I didn't feel that way."
Well, and that almost goes back to kind of what we were talking about earlier with how the Chiefs are kind of seeing the regular season. Whereas last year, I feel like they didn't feel like they needed to be on their A game. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
this year, it's the complete opposite. We need to be on our A game. We have to be on our A game. And if our A game looks sloppy and we get a win, what the hell does it really matter? Because it's just another step forward. And I think that I don't think they want to give up home field advantage again. I think part of it is screw that. We're not going on the road again. They did it once. They went at Buffalo. They went at Baltimore. They beat them both. They won a Super Bowl. What more do you need proof that there is no one on our level in this league? Now let's go out, win as many games as we can, lock up that number one seed, and make everybody come to us again and beat them at home. Um, Last thing before we get out of here on this, I want to ask you about Buffalo. Obviously, next week's a huge game at the Buffalo Bills. It's on the road. Back to the crime scene, wide right, 27-24, Kansas City Chiefs moving on to the conference championship game. How do you feel about that game next week? Josh Allen starting to return to Josh Allen form, throwing a couple of picks today. He's still the turnover merchant that we know and love. And I guess that was pretty much it. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. How you feel?
Well,
I feel like I had one more part to throw on there, but
I think you're right. Obviously Josh Allen's had a great year. I didn't expect him to have that kind of year, especially after losing the pieces that he lost. So I'll give him credit where credit is due. But I said this earlier in the year. Eventually, Josh Allen is going to gas himself out. I mean, that guy is the Buffalo Bills. I mean, that's just who that's just who it is. And nobody plays harder than Josh Allen. I'll give him a 1,000% credit on that. I mean, that guy will get hit by a truck and get up. So I mean, Josh Allen is as tough as they come. But this is the game that it seems like in Patrick's career that he either people think he should really cares about but doesn't, or we just lose it in the end. And for some reason the regular season against the Bills it just has never turned out in our favor. Now, I think the Bills defense is way worse than it's been in years past. I don't think Josh Allen can I think the Chiefs defense is way better than it's been in years past. I think Josh Allen is going to have a problem. We saw it today. He threw two picks. I don't think he had any touchdowns. I don't think his completion percentage was all that great either. They still won, but it wasn't anything great.
yeah, I think you're right. I'm gonna pull up his stat
I
line real
can't remember what
quick.
it was. I think it was,
22 of 37, no
yeah.
touchdowns, two interceptions. He did have 8 carries for 50 yards and a touchdown on the ground. So, um, as for Bills Mafia, that means he threw no interceptions.
well, I,
Okay. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, here's the thing. I think the Chiefs know how to contain, but one thing that I've noticed that we are missing desperately is Willie Gay. 100% missing Willie Gay's ability to go
I
sideline
agree.
to sideline. Nick Bolton's downhill. He's, from north south. Willie Gay was east west.
Yeah.
He had the speed, and we're missing that horrendously. Leo Chanel's another north south guy. He's just
In
going to punch in and out.
coverage, yeah, I feel like in coverage it
Hmm.
kind of lacks, it leaves a
Yeah.
little bit more to be
Well, I mean,
desired.
look at our stats against tight ends. They're horrendous.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I
No,
mean,
I
it's
mean, you're an all-star tight end if you're playing the Chiefs every week. I mean,
mhm.
in fantasy, that's damn near the move. Stream whoever's playing against the Chiefs.
Well, and that's the
Uh,
thing too, is Denver was 27th in throwing the ball to the tight end. And I think their tight end had 60, 70 yards, something like that.
yeah, he had a big day. Bills, Chiefs, who wins?
I think the Chiefs win. I think this is going to be a rare game in the regular season anyway, where the Chiefs just look better from the start. And I say that because this is Buffalo's Super Bowl ever, which, it feels kind of arrogant to say, but it just seems like it means a lot more to them than it does to us. Now, I think it means a lot more to Patrick when it comes to, the Brady Manning dynamic and all that stuff, but this is the biggest game for Buffalo every year. And it's a big game for us, but it's not as big because we always beat them in the end. So I think Buffalo is going to be over their skis in this one. I think it'll probably be, let's go 28-17 at the end.
Okay, 28-17. I dig that. I don't know if the offense can put up that many points. I feel you. The Buffalo's defense isn't as good, but I don't know. And granted, we did just watch them against Denver, so maybe I'm being a little bit of or having a little bit of recency bias against a really good defense. Um, but I would like to say the Chiefs will pull it off again. I think that just with the run that they're on and what they're doing, I kind of agree with you where I think that they will be able to just be a little bit better than Buffalo that day. Now, granted, with the revenge aspect of it, I don't know, that does make it to where but that they're going to give it their all, which I think the Chiefs are used to. But with Josh Allen starting to, have some more turnovers these last couple of weeks, I think maybe he forces something or something to that effect to where the Chiefs can cause a turnover or two. I think Patrick just has to make sure he plays a clean game at Buffalo as well. So,
Which he
I'm
has the
rolling with
last
the
two
Chiefs.
weeks.
Say it again.
Which he has the last 2 weeks for
You're
once. I
absolutely
mean,
right.
it's two straight
Yeah,
games, no interceptions. I mean, that interception streak was a lot of it, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but a lot of it was just very annoying interceptions that weren't necessarily his fault. You saw
I
balls
agree.
tipped at the line, you saw his hand get hit, and those were games where he was on his way to not throw an interception.
Yeah.
There were 3 or 4 games where he was in the fourth quarter and he hadn't thrown an interception. So a lot of people read into that, but Peyton Manning threw 16, 15 picks a year. I mean,
Yeah.
let's call it for what it is. But
I mean, that happens when you're out there, slinging the rock the way
mhm.
Patrick Mahomes does. And, you want to say that he didn't do anything in this game today, but I'll take 266 and a touchdown with what, maybe two or three first downs with his legs or whatever he did
I
with his
don't
legs today.
I don't know who's saying he didn't do anything in this game. I mean, that's childish, but I mean, that's just part of it. But if any other team wins a close game and your quarterback doesn't turn the ball over, throws a touchdown, has over 250 yards, that's a pretty good day.
It's a pretty good day. I
But
mean, hell, 10, 20 years ago, that would have been one of the
that's
best
phenomenal.
performances of the
Yeah.
week, right?
Yeah.
Um, okay, last thing before we get finished up here, I want to ask you what's your take on the MVP? Who you got MVP right now?
Uh, you know, I think just statistical well, if he was on a winning team, I think right now it's probably Joe Burrow. I mean, if you look at what he's doing, and he's on a heck of a run. Um, if Baker's team was a little better, I think you could throw Baker in there. I mean, look what he's done for his career. You have to unfortunately put Lamar in there. I'm sure Ray will enjoy that one. Um,
It's really what I was baiting for.
yeah. Um, I think Josh Allen has regressed a little bit. I don't think he's at that level that he was. Um, Derrick Henry. I mean, you have to put Derrick Henry in there. I mean, what he's done, which I didn't think he was going to do in Baltimore, is
I
phenomenal.
didn't either. I didn't
I
either.
mean, he's
Especially after
been
opening
phenomenal.
night against the Chiefs.
Hmm.
I thought that the wheels had kind of fallen off of Derrick Henry.
Um, Another guy who's really kind of redesigned his career, Saquon Barkley. There's another guy that you could put up there. Not necessarily. Well, I think you could put him up there. I mean, there's a lot of guys who I
I don't
don't
think
think
they
they're
have a
the
winning record either, though.
Eagles. I think they're 7-2.
Oh, are they? Boy, in my head, I just think they're
I mean,
terrible.
they're not that good, but I mean, 7-2,
They
seven
are
two. But
7-2. How are
yeah,
they 7-2?
I don't know.
Hey,
I
fair enough,
mean,
fair enough.
but I don't, and I think this year's kind of different. I don't think there's a clear favorite for MVP at this moment. I think Vegas at one point still had Patrick on there. I, as much as I would love Patrick to win MVP, I don't think he necessarily deserves that.
That is my favorite
Um,
part about this year, though. That is my number one favorite thing that I've seen happen this year. After
mhm.
what, 4 or 5 weeks, they put the Vegas odds out. And now this is one that I feel like, able to talk about because in 2022, I placed a bet on Patrick Mahomes to win MVP when he was doing terrible and his odds were not good. And I won some money off of that, right? And so this was my take on it. If you don't like the odds right now, throw some money on your guy because that's what I did in 2022. And I just
Hmm.
saw, everybody be like, "Oh man, the league is so favored towards Patrick Mahomes." I'm like, "Bro, this is not the league. This is Vegas odds. This is two different ball games we're playing right now. What we're seeing on the
Right.
field versus Vegas trying to protect their money just in case Patrick Mahomes turns around and goes scorched earth the rest of the season." But personally, my personal take on MVP right now, there is no other discussion than Lamar Jackson. I think personally, it's the efficiency that he plays with that I value over everything else. I mean, it seems like every single week I see he's got pretty much about what we're talking about with Patrick Mahomes. He's got around 250 passing yards. Whatever he does on the ground depends. Maybe a couple touchdowns in there. But when you look at his completion percentage, I mean, it's like every week you're looking at 13 for 16 or 15 for 20. Thursday night, he was 25 for 33, 290 yards, four touchdowns in the air. He also put up 33 yards on the ground. So, again, give or take whatever he puts up on the ground, sometimes he has bigger games than anything. But the efficiency to me personally is what I'll take every single time. Like I personally, as a Chiefs fan, as somebody that, goes to Chiefs games, watches every single Chiefs game, watches the film. If any other quarterback were out there to be available, and you had to switch Patrick Mahomes for 8 out of 10 times, I'm probably going Lamar. And the other two is the other guy you mentioned in Joe Burrow because I do think he is having a terrific season. He's on a losing team, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what your fandom is.
I love that they're on a bad team. I
I
mean,
do too,
it,
personally, but
it
I do
just
think
real,
he's the best technically sound quarterback in the league today.
yeah.
I think when it comes to the quarterback position, he does everything right. And another reason why I think people hate Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson to a point, they do everything wrong and get away with it. And they spite them or they spite that and are still great without doing everything perfectly.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is, you know, and I hate to have my own humble pie here, but I have to agree with you. I think Lamar's been the most efficient. Um, I think he's, been the most effective. I watched him in that Bengals game and I was surprised. I mean, he's thrown the ball way better than he has his whole career. Um, so there's no argument that I will concede against Lamar Jackson. Eventually, he will fail, but I'll give it to him. I think he's probably the front runner. Um, but I think Burrow's right behind him. And
Yeah.
I don't
And I do
I don't
think Derrick Henry
necessarily.
aided a big part in the success
Yes,
Lamar is having this year.
yeah,
But they also kind of bought into this run game finally, it seems like, where they're like 100%, all in for it and really scheming around it and scheming perfectly around Lamar, which is kind of, I mean, me and you have had this conversation a million times, and I've had this conversation with Ray too, because also Ray has always been frustrated with this, is in just the fact that it's like, if you're gonna commit to the guy. We know who he
hmm
is as a quarterback. He may not be the best, he may not do everything technically right, but if you're gonna go all in on him and try to win a Super Bowl with this quarterback, go all in. Look at the Chiefs. Like again,
right.
taking another quarterback that just doesn't do everything right necessarily, and they go all in, and you see what happens. They win Super Bowls. So
Yeah, and well, I agree with you. I think here's my take. Like you said, commitment to the guy is a big part. I think the Eagles at one point were not that committed to Jalen Hurts. I still don't think they are.
I agree.
Um, Obviously, the Cowboys were committed to Dak Prescott at one time, and their contract shows that, but you can see it. They don't, they're not really. I mean, just how they play. Um, but the Bengals are definitely committed to Joe Burrow. The Chiefs are definitely committed to Patrick Mahomes. The Ravens are definitely committed to Lamar Jackson. The Chargers are definitely committed to Justin Herbert. You can see it. And you just see these guys who they have the commitment, so they're going to go out and play every week as hard as they can. And that's the biggest part of the NFL is if you have the commitment, you're going to have the team and you're going to have the guy.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Well, EDJ, you have anything else before we get out of here? Is it on your mind?
I just love that the Bengals are 4-7. It's so great. It's it's the cheapest fan base in the world. It's the cheapest organization in the world. They had that good run for 2 or 3 years, and then they think they're the best team in the world every single year. But when the actual good teams come to town, they, get waxed. So I've enjoyed that quite a bit. The Bengals are the Bungles. So,
It has
oh
indeed
well.
been a fun first half of the season. Well, thank you for coming on the pod this week. I appreciate it.
I
Taking the
appreciate
time
it,
out of
buddy,
your
as
day
always.
to come and do the pod with me. So we'll definitely have to do this again and do this more often here through the second half of the season. So,
Sounds good, buddy.
all right, man, you take it easy.
You too.
Before you go, make sure you smash that subscribe button if you are still here watching this episode of the Papa Sharono's podcast. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the content as well. We are on the road to 300 subscribers still. Make sure you hit that bell to stay notified whenever I post or go live. Film reviews, breakdowns, hater wager parlays, the podcast, or whenever I go live as well. Just wanted to shout out EDJ one more time and thank him for coming on the podcast this week and getting to hear a little bit of a different side and not just me yapping the entire time. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Until next time, we will see you back here next week on the Papa Sharono's podcast. Go Chiefs.